Welcome, my fellow Americans. I'm Bill Lipinski, and this is Two Guys on Politics. And next up is the voice of the one and only Ray Hanania.
And I am Ray Hanania, and I appreciate Bill Lipinski. A lot of people, Bill, they enjoy your comments. You were a congressman for so many years, alderman, a Democratic committeeman involved in politics. And I can't remember the exact date we met, but I know it was like probably around 1977, I think, when we first started talking about politics and meeting.
76 or 77, you are correct.
Yes.
It seems like yesterday.
If only it were yesterday, that would be nice. This is Two Guys on Politics, November 7, 2024, Season 3, Episode 35. I'm Ray Hanania with my co-host, Congressman Bill Lipinski. Now, in this episode, because there's a problem with his video camera, we just have him on audio, but you get to watch me the whole time. They get to stare at me, Bill, on our Two Guys on Politics flag promo. So, Bill, what did you think of? Were you shocked about the Trump election, the extent of how strong his vote was?
Well, I was not surprised at him being reelected. I do believe that I predicted it, I think, on our podcast, and I know through a few other people. I was surprised at the extent of the victory. And just think, Ray, if the Republicans had a candidate that people liked, how great the Republican victory would have been underneath those circumstances. That's incredible, absolutely incredible.
That's the second time I've heard that today from people. If this had been Ronald Reagan, the vote would have been even bigger, apparently, because let me ask you, was it, obviously it's a combination of things, but is it more unhappiness with the Democratic Party? Or is it more that they believe Trump is maybe a better person now than he was when he lost 4 years ago?
I don't believe anybody believes he's a better person now than he was 4 years ago. I hope and pray that he is, but yes. I doubt it. I think the Democratic Party has a lot of problems.
Yes.
And unless they correct those problems, they're going to be a minority party for a long time.
Right.
Now, I also that what contributed to this was the terrible campaign that Harris ran.
Yeah.
Coming out of the convention, her numbers were sky high.
Yeah.
She had a great smile. She loved to laugh, and it was an infectious laugh.
Yeah.
But as time on, she refused to say what she would do as president of the United States. She refused to disagree with Joe Biden on anything whatsoever. And then about 2.5 weeks before Election Day, she started attacking Trump.
Right.
Her numbers then started to go down, down, down. Prior to that, people didn't know what she stood for, but they liked her. But once she started going after Trump,
right,
they no longer liked her. And I believe that's what has cost her, as many votes as it has.
And you know what is ironic, I think, is that we didn't know her and she was doing okay. And all she had to do was let us know her and what the details of her views were. All she had to do was go that little extra to give the public more information. And she didn't do that. It was, you kept hearing these comments that, well, she's not going to do press conferences. We're going to only put her in certain, interviews. She didn't do a lot of interviews. And we want to protect her. And we only have 3 months to do it. And I'm thinking, you know what, if she would have just got up there and instead of worrying about how she was going to do, just said, hey, this is what I'm going to do with the economy, she might have got support. But as it turned out, nobody knows what she was going to do with the economy. And all they heard was, under Trump, the economy was great. And I think the economy, not abortion, was the big issue. She pushed abortion because, being a woman, I feel she thought she was going to win over a vast majority of women. And I don't think that's what happened at all. I think the abortion issue is like every election. We've seen abortion in every presidential election. It's never been the deciding factor. Why they made it this time the focus of their campaign, I think, was a mistake. It should have been the economy.
Well, it not only should have been the economy, but I believe they should have had a real detailed plan on what they were going to do about the border.
Right.
Because I think the number one cause of her defeat was her own personality, the way she hid from saying what she was going to do. And then she started attacking Trump, making her a less liked person. And then the overall Democratic Biden economy wasn't good. And the border situation was horrendous. All of these things contributed to the Republican victory. You know, people, it's ironic. I heard 4 people be interviewed this morning on television. And they all said that they voted for Trump. And they voted for Trump because they liked his policies and what he, was going to do for the country. But they wouldn't want him as a neighbor next door.
Well, I mean, listen, that's the downside of Trump. If he can control his personality and stop being petty, he almost did it in this election. Up until the attempted assassination, he was really calm and quiet and respectful. Then after the attempted assassination, obviously he got angry and started attacking. But listen, Kamala Harris was a prosecutor. They said a tough prosecutor. But in the end, she was a prosecutor that was no different than the woman who prosecuted O.J. Simpson, because she did not come across as a tough prosecutor at all. And I think that instead of being a tough prosecutor, she was manipulated by the Clintons, by the Obamas. They felt that let's hold her back. We're going to win because people hate Trump, and Trump's a bad person, and he's, a convicted felon. So I think they played the game. Let's shield her and let Trump be the focus. Attack Trump, and instead of explaining what her policies, and obviously, I think that's what backfired on them.
Well, it never works in politics, though, Ray. If you try to hide a candidate. Now, people will say it worked for Joe Biden 4 years ago. He didn't go out much, he campaigned from his basement. But really what it was, the height of the dislike for Trump was at its peak at that particular time.
Right.
And so many people simply would not vote for Trump then. That's why Joe Biden won, not because he was any great campaigner, not because he had great ideas. It was simply that the height of the dislike for Trump,
And then 4 years later, they're disappointed, right? They didn't get anything.
Exactly.
The economy, this idea they kept saying that the economy is good, inflation has slowed. No, it hasn't. It's costing me more than anything ever. In the last 4 years have been the worst 4 years of my income. And we're lucky we have incomes. There are people out there that are struggling. But everything that I have, I think, is worth 33% less than what it was. And I'm fortunate that I could still survive on that. But everybody else, who's earning less money, when you have a third of your income just vanish, that's painful. Do you think that's maybe why 45% of Hispanics, who I think believe, the successful ones, were worried about their economy and their income, they voted for Trump. And then the 55% of the Hispanics, according to the polls, I think they voted for Harris because they were more concerned about the border, illegal immigrants, illegal aliens, migrants, the dreamers, all that stuff. But Trump won 45% of the Hispanic community. And I really believe it was because that community loves being in America, but they love it because the economy has been very beneficial to them.
Yes, that's very, very true. Now, the economy overall the two worst areas of the economy are for groceries. When you go to the grocery store, you see how that price continues
Yes.
to go up. And when you buy gas, same problem. All people need groceries. Almost all people need gas. And the people who can least afford increases, really were struggling because of that. And also, the Democratic Party gets involved with the situation with, transgender, and people get very upset that when you allow, a fella who was a man converts to become a woman, and then you allow that person to participate in sports against normal, healthy girls and women, the man competing against them.
Yes.
And I'll tell you, the gay community, the lesbian community really is not happy with the Democrats highlighting that stuff so much, because they get thrown into it. When that's not their, they're not that way. They're not interested in that. And most people in this day and age have finally come to accept people are different. Some people are lesbian, some people are gay, some people are straight. But now they're getting dumped in with the transgender stuff, operations on 8, 9-year-olds. They don't like that, so they're opposed to that. So I don't think that they're supporting the Democratic Party either.
Yeah, and also, a larger number of African Americans, mostly men, voted for Trump. And I'm trying to figure out why would they do that? And I'm thinking, first of all, African Americans are like everybody else. They're worried about crime. And in a lot of African American neighborhoods, there is a lot more crime than there is in some white neighborhoods, in those urban city areas like the Chicagoland area. I'm sure if you go into some of the all white areas, crime is pretty bad there too. So I'm not saying it's a racial thing, but I think African Americans thought, you know what? They need someone tough on crime because they're suffering from that too. And I also think the one other thing, I remember when Harold Washington ran for mayor, and I'm sure you remember too, the people that opposed him, a lot of the Verdoliak 29. Okay, we don't have to go through who all the members were. One of the things that they argued against, and when Harold was running after he won the Democratic primary, was that he had served 40 days in jail for failing to file his income taxes. Now, for a community that has a lot of encounters with the police, they identified with that. They identified with him, and he did very, very well because they felt they were being picked on as a minority, that they were being prosecuted and arrested for whatever reason, right or wrong. They identified with him. I think that there was there was some identification with all these trumped up charges against Trump, where they weaponized the judicial system to prosecute him. And I think many African Americans feel that that's what happens to them, and they identified with Trump.
Oh, I think that's very, very true. Now, I think some of the charges that were levied against him legally have been totally and completely unnecessary, are not going to go anyplace whatsoever.
Right.
But Democrats really honed in on that, and they tried to indict him for everything that was possible to indict him for. And he came out stronger every time he got indicted because people really felt that he was being picked on.
Yeah. And listen, they martyred him. They turned him into a martyr. And they by overdoing it, sometimes if they had just been very picky about the charges against him and instead of this overwhelming assault, you turn on TV, every news station, they hate Trump, they love Kamala. The entertainment media, Jimmy Kimmel and the rest of them, they hate Trump, they love Kamala. You see that Oprah Winfrey, Michelle Obama, all the celebrities that came out to endorse Kamala Harris and attack Trump, all the activists that attacked Trump, that created a backlash, I think, that hurt her and built up sympathy, I think, a little bit for Trump. And I think that that was a mistake on their part. They were just too heavy-handed in the attacks. I think I saw Jimmy Kimmel almost to the point of tears acknowledging that Trump won. I think it was last night,
Well,
and I can't stand him because he's so biased. Funny, but he's just terribly biased, and I don't want to support anybody he supports.
well, the news media has become nothing more than a propaganda machine
Yes,
for the Democratic Party
yes.
and for progressive, ultra liberal causes, which are anti the mainstream American people.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the media was a cheerleader for Kamala Harris, and they hurt her by fighting for her. They became a shield for her. So they made her look good. But she got comfortable in being, and I think soft, in being defended by them. She never had to really go out there and fight and push her issues. I'm sure she had some great ideas, but I don't think she was ever pushed by her own side to tell the American people what are those great ideas. And Trump, you know what, I don't agree with everything he does, but I know exactly what he's going to do on a lot of issues. And he would brag about it and talk about the economy. He was president. We know what he did. The economy was great when he was president, and it's faltered under Biden. So yeah, it's like nobody did Kamala Harris a service. All the, cheerleading they did for her, I think it hurt her.
Well, I think that they did not allow her to be herself and go out and campaign the way she had campaigned when she was in California, when
Right.
she ran, in San Francisco, and then when she ran statewide. I mean, after all, she was elected,
Yeah.
a U.S. senator from California. She must have something on the ball, which you would think the way she was handled in this election, that she was an imbecile, and they didn't want to put her out there
Right.
to be questioned by anyone that was not totally in their hip pocket.
The perception they set up of her hurt her. They hurt her.
Yes.
And instead of being a tough person that I think she had it in her to be, she never let it out, thinking that, and I think being told by the old party. I mean, here's the real question, Bill. The Democratic Party is in trouble. And not just
Absolutely.
because Trump was elected and he now controls the Senate and the White House and probably will control the Congress. Um, there's a leadership problem. When I look at the people who were leaders and representing the Democratic Party, they didn't impress me. They worried me. And this election proves that they're weak. They need a new leadership. And I'm just saddened a little bit that we didn't get a third party. I had hoped Jill Stein, I mean, she's an okay candidate, not the greatest candidate, but I thought, okay, if the Green Party could get 5%, we could have three parties. But she never got that close enough to that. In fact, half the Arabs actually voted for Trump, it turns out. And the other half were split between Kamala Harris and Jill Stein. So the Arab community identified with Trump's conservative values because they're a conservative community. They believe in religion, they believe in family values. They don't want their kids to be told, that they have a right to be transgender when they're, 12 years old.
Right.
We don't want anybody interfering with our kids. They're just like us. So it was just we're going to see what's going to happen, though, right, Bill? I mean, what do you think Trump is going to do? What do you think are going to be his first things?
Oh, I don't know. He shoots his mouth off so much. He's such a blowhard because he thinks it gains him votes here and there.
Yeah.
Perhaps it does. I mean,
Maybe.
many people have said that, well, he's a brash New Yorker. He says all those things, but he doesn't mean a half of those things.
Right.
He just likes to say those kind of things.
Well,
but I
go ahead.
know what he's going to do. I mean, he's going to be the president. He's going to have the Senate. It looks like he's going to have the House, at least for his first 2 years.
Right.
I want to mention here, the Democrats kept talking about wanting to change the filibuster. They wanted to get rid of the filibuster. They kept saying it was undemocratic. Now
they're going to need it.
Now they're afraid their lives that the Republicans might decide to do away with it. and that'll be very harmful towards them. We need people that in politics that will be consistent, people that will believe something and not change whether you're in power or out of power. But one thing I want to mention also is that the leadership of the Democratic Party, the former Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, a lot of big money people, the president, the majority leader of the Senate, and many others forced Joe Biden out of this race. Okay. Yeah. They said he couldn't win. They were afraid that they were going to suffer in the Senate and the House. So they pushed him out. Well, he got his revenge, though. The day after they pushed him out, he nominated, in his mind, his vice president to be president of the United States.
Yeah.
Now, this was a black woman that he, the president, was supporting to take his place. There was no way the Democratic Party could turn away from that. Right. They would lose so much in the minority community. But it robbed her, and it robbed anyone else in the Democratic Party that wanted to run for president this time. And
they should have had a competition, in other words, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they could have done it at convention.
Yeah, but they didn't, as we all know. I mean, it's funny that, there's a hypocrisy that is Trump may have a very horrible attitude and pettiness and stuff, but the Democrats sometimes are almost as vindictive and hypocritical when they want, to eliminate the filibuster when it was to their advantage. And you're right. Now that it could turn around and bite them because they're going to need that to stop some stuff. So that's the kind of thing that the Democrats have come to represent, that they will change the rules to benefit themselves, not the entire system. And I think if they would go back to the entire system and support the system, whether they win or lose, and show that they stand up for principle, they might be able to have some games. But Kamala Harris never went before the convention for support. They had a little telephone poll, right? And they all decided to support her in secret. And then she was presented as a nominee as if the convention had anything to do with it, and it didn't.
Nope, that's absolutely correct. And many of these things were talked about by, pundits as the campaign season went along. And many of them turned out to be right. That's one of the reasons that in spite of having a person at the head of the Republican ticket that is not very well liked at all, the Republicans managed to win. So just think if they had a candidate like Ronald Reagan, who people liked at the head of the ticket this time around, the Democrats would be lucky if they had any senators left.
Yeah. And we have, are we ever going to hear the name Liz Cheney again, or has that been evaporated? I think that hurt. I really think that hurt Kamala Harris, because there were a lot of Democrats who didn't like Liz Cheney. They didn't like Dick Cheney, her father, and considered him a war criminal. Now, I'm not saying everybody agrees with that, but there were a lot. And then there was no way she was going to get the support of all the Democrats. And obviously she didn't have that much support among Republicans at all. Right. And it just goes to show you that type of strategy, that vengeance, that really Trump managed it, but Liz Cheney could not.
Yep, absolutely. And we have to try to see that we can bring this country together somehow. In spite of our differences, we've got to try to bring this country together. And it may take a third party to do that. And I just hope and pray that we can do that, or the Democratic Party can become more of a party that is really in touch with mainstream America, so they can actually give the Republicans some competition on Election Day.
Well, I mean, listen, the Republicans are saying they brought America together without the Democrats, and the Democrats really took a beating. I think that, I'm a little if Trump allows this to go to his head, he could do some horrible things that may not be
Oh,
good.
God.
I'm worried about, what he might do on foreign policy issues. I want him to crack down on the border. I want him to, if he wants to go ahead with tariffs, go ahead and increase tariffs on foreign countries, but drop the tax on Americans, cut the taxes on
Right.
Americans because we're paying too much. There's a way to do it and to get what he wants. And I think if he does it the right way, he will. But do you expect him to pardon himself when he becomes
Well,
president?
I expect him to work out something. Now,
Yes.
remember, there's two cases that are state cases, which he does not really have full, he doesn't have any authority to exonerate himself in those cases. But by the same token, I don't see any state government wanting to try to imprison a sitting president of the United States. It is questionable that to do so anyway.
Yeah.
I think the Supreme Court would say, as long as he's a sitting president, a state cannot rise up, and put him in jail. So I don't think he really has any fear about going to jail whatsoever. Now, what happens after his term, I don't know, but it's too far down the road for me to even think about it. I'm anxious to see what he does with the situation in Ukraine.
That's what I was just going to ask you. I was just going to ask you, do you have confidence that he's going to stand up for Ukraine or cave?
Well, I think what he's going to do is tell the president of the Ukraine, and he's going to tell Putin. He'll broker a deal between the two of them whereby Putin stops the war, but Putin gets to keep all that land on the eastern part of the Ukraine that they now occupy, the Russians now occupy, and he will say the justification for it is that all those people there speak Russian. So they really belong to
that bothers me. That's going to upset me if they do that. Does that mean Ukraine can keep all that Russian territory that they took?
Well, if they have any territory that they took,
they have. They've taken a big section of Russian territory, I'm worried about that. That's the one area that I'm really concerned about. Not so much the Middle East, because I think Trump can handle Netanyahu, and I think Netanyahu's government is going to collapse in the face of all the problems they have. And if Israel gets a more moderate government, maybe we'll see more peace in the Middle East. But I'm concerned about Ukraine. Out of all the issues, the price of Trump being elected may be the price of democracy in Europe. And that, the Democrats did a poor job of addressing that because it was a big cost. Hundreds of billions were being spent, to defend Ukraine, and we were feeling it in this terrible economy. So I don't think they managed that issue properly, but I'm concerned about that.
Well, the Democrats never gave the Ukrainians enough to win this battle with Russia. I believe that the policy of the Biden administration was simply to bleed Russia as much as possible and use the Ukrainians to do so. And I think that has occurred since now the Russians are importing soldiers from North Korea.
Yeah, that's scary too.
Like needing soldiers from North Korea to help them out. That's incredible.
That is scary. All right, Bill, anything else?
No, I think that's it. Just I hope and pray that Trump has changed somewhat. I hope and pray that he acts in behalf of all the American people, and somehow we get rid of this chaos and confusion and division that we put up with every day in our republic.
Yeah, I hope so too. All right, Bill, thank you. I'm Ray Hanania.
I'm Bill Lipinski, and this is Two Guys on Politics.
We'll see you next week, everybody. Talk to you later. Thanks, Bill.